Welcome back, guys, and if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. So today I'm going to go over 4 knots with you guys that I think you'll find useful no matter what kind of fishing situation you may be in. The things that I look for when tying a knot, obviously I want to be strong, but I also want to be simple to tie. The simpler a knot is to tie, the less of a chance there is that you'll make a mistake out on the water when you're in a hurry. So let's go ahead and get started with knot number 1. Okay, so knot number 1 is going to be the polymer knot. It can be used with braided line, fluorocarbon, or monofilament. However, I use this knot exclusively for braided line. There's different knots that I use for monofilament, and I'll be showing those in a minute. But the first step to tying this knot is to take the end of your line and double over about 6 to 8 inches of the line. So we have about 6 or 8 inches running parallel with each other. And then we're going to take the end of the line where the two meet, and we're going to run it through the object that we're tying on, whether that is a lure, a hook, a swivel, whatever. In this case, it's a swivel. So you want to run that about halfway through, and then you want to tie a regular overhand knot. Just like that. But before we tighten it all the way up, we're going to take this loop that we've created by tying the overhand knot, and we're going to run the object that we're tying on. We're going to run it through that loop. Just like that. And then you're going to take the main line and start pulling it tight. And you want to make sure all this comes together. You want to make sure it all cinches down nice and neat. Sometimes you have to pull on the tag end a little bit. And that is literally all there is to it. Now we're going to trim our tag end off. And on every knot that I tie, I like to leave about 1/8 of an inch of tag line. The old saying goes, you know, if they didn't see the first 100 foot of line, the 1/8 or 1/4 inch of line, tag line is not going to make a difference, and I agree with that. So that is the polymer knot. That's what you want it to look like when you're done. You want to make sure it's seated down just like that, all nice and neat. If it kind of bunches up or something, you know, cut it off, tie it again. It doesn't take but a minute. You want to make sure it's tied right. But if you tie it right, you don't have to worry about this knot ever failing. Okay, knot number 2, this is going to be a knot that I use exclusively on heavy monofilament or fluorocarbon lines. 50 pound and up pound test is what I use this knot for. For this example, I'm going to be using 60 pound monofilament. But this is the clinch knot, or the improved clinch knot. This is the first knot that a lot of people learn how to tie. I know it was certainly the first knot that I learned. And I still use it today, but like I mentioned, I use it on the heavier monofilament lines. But we're going to run the end of our line through whatever we're tying on, and we're going to grab the two, you know, a few inches away from the object, pinch the two together, and start twisting the object that we're going to tie on. We're going to give this about 5 or 6 twists on this heavier line. If it was lighter line, you would probably want to use some more twist. And then you can see we have created a loop above the swivel that we're tying on. You want to run through that loop. On a normal clinch knot, you would be done right there, but on the improved clinch knot, we created another loop, and we ran it through that first loop. We're going to bring it back through that, and that's going to lock it down so we don't have to worry about it slipping. Normally, you would want to moisten this line before you started cinching it down, but since this is just a demonstration, I didn't do it. So now we're going to take our main line and just start slowly pulling that tight. You want to make sure it all comes together nice and neat. And normally on the big monofilament lines like this, the improved clinch knot is really not that pretty of a knot. But like I said, I've never had it let me down, and it's super easy to tie. Knot number 3 is going to be the Trilean knot. And I like to use this knot on smaller monofilament or fluorocarbon lines. We'll say 40 pounds all the way down to 2 pounds. And this knot kind of reminds me of a hybrid between a polymer knot and a clinch knot. But the first step to tying this knot is to go through the eye one time, just like we did on the clinch knot. Except for on this one, we're going to go through a second time and make a loop. Just like that. And we're going to hold that with our thumb. We're going to take the tag end, and we're going to do 3 wraps around the main line. Just like that. So now you can see we have 2 loops that we've created, and we're going to run that tag in through both loops, and we're just going to pull that tight. And that's what the Trilean knot should look like when you're done. As you can see, it goes through the eye twice, just like the polymer knot. But the top side of it is more like the clinch knot. Last but not least, I'm going to show you guys 2 different ways to tie a snail knot onto your monofilament leader. If you're not familiar with the snail knot and what the benefit is from it, stick around to the end and I'll kind of show you, kind of give you a demonstration on what the benefit of a snail knot is. But the first snail knot we're going to use is just the no knot snail. It's probably the most popular one and the simplest one. So you want to go through the front of the eye of the hook, about 1 inch down the back of the shank, hold that tight. The pieces coming out of the front, you want to grab that and you want to wrap about 7 to 9 times really tight around the shank of the hook. And then the other end of our leader, we're going to take that other end and go through the back of the eye of the hook, just like that, and pull that tight. And that's all there is to it. You can cut your tag end off some on this knot, but I would recommend to leave at least 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, because this knot does have a tendency to kind of back off and loosen up, and you don't want that tag end to get under the end of those wraps. So that's the no knot snail. That's the first snail knot that I learned how to tie. I used it for years, never had a problem with it, but I have learned a new snail knot in the past year or so that I have more confidence in, and I haven't seen it a whole lot, so I think some of you guys might be interested in this. So for the second snail knot, we're going to actually go through the back of the eye of the hook first. Leave about 1 inch coming out that way. Other end of our leader, we're going to go in through the front and leave about 1 inch coming out that way. And we're going to hold these 2 lines coming out right here down against the shank of the hook, just like that. So we basically created a big circle with our leader material. The part of the circle that's coming out of the front of the eye of the hook, we're going to grab that and we're going to do 7 to 9 wraps just like we did on the other knot, but we're going to do these a little bit looser. We're not going to get these super tight just yet. Hold all those wraps with your thumb, straighten out your loop, and that 1 inch that's coming out of the front of the hook, you're going to want to grab that and start pulling it tight. And then when the tighter you pull, the tighter those wraps are going to get around the shank of the hook. And on this snail knot, you can actually cut your tag end off as close as you want to, and you don't ever have to worry about it slipping. Once you tie this knot, it is actually tied on the shank of the hook. It can't ever slip, get loose. So there's the no knot snail on the left, and the second snail that I showed you guys on the right. As you can see, everything's kind of under the wraps on this knot, and everything's on the outside of the wrap on this knot. So this one has a tendency to kind of loosen up, especially if you're pre-tying rigs. But the harder you pull on that leader line, the tighter it gets. Like I mentioned, I've used that knot for years. As far as I know, I've never had a problem with it. However, I do prefer to use this knot now that I learned it. I actually learned this knot on YouTube, but it stays tight. Everything's under the wraps, and I just feel more confident in it that way. If you're not familiar with the snail knot and what it's for, this knot actually improves your hookups. Just the knot itself improves your hookups. And it's very important that you tie this knot correctly, because if you tie it backwards where the line's coming out of the back of the hook, it will actually cause you to lose fish instead of hooking up more fish. So with the line coming out of the front of the hook the way it is, whenever a fish grabs the bait and loads up the rod, whenever he tightens the line up, with the line coming out of the front of the hook, it's actually going to pull that hook into whatever you're trying to hook, which would be the fish's mouth. If you tie it backwards to where it's coming out of this side, when the fish grabs it, it's actually going to pull that away from whatever you're trying to hook, so it actually hurts you. So always make sure that line is coming out of the front side of the hook, and I guarantee you get more hookups. If you've not been using a snail knot on circle hooks, K.O. hooks, J hooks, start using it. Even bass fishermen use this knot on certain rigs for better hookups. So it's definitely worth checking out. If you've never tried it, give it a try. Promise you it'll work. So I hope some of you guys found this video useful. Those are 4 basic knots that I use for pretty much every situation. If you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you checked out some of our other videos. We mostly target trophy catfish out on the big rivers, but we occasionally fish for other species as well. But I want to thank you guys for watching. God bless you all, and we'll see you in the next one.